The first thing that I wanted to mention is the CLT calculator spreadsheet that's on Canvas. I should have added this in yesterday, along with how to use the ANS function on the calculator. I don't know why I didn't think of it, but I didn't. So I guess at this point, this is sort of a last-minute thing. But if there's anything that you're stuck on where you think you're doing everything right on homework 9 and it's just not working out, to check to see if it is just something to do with the tolerance or the rounding, then this is what you can use, because the CLT calculator spreadsheet, it's going to round off so far out, probably to like 50 places or something, to where you're going to end up within the tolerance if you just input all of the sample data correctly. So I have different versions of it. The first tab is for a single proportion, but if you go through and look, and I guess you probably can't read it down here, but there is an option for a single mean, difference of proportions, difference of means, and then, well, I guess two difference of means ones, difference of means and independent samples, and then paired samples. Even though for paired samples, that's more or less the same thing as what you would do for a single mean. So the way that all of them work is that you have these cells up here. Any of the ones where the cells are kind of a peach color on any of these sheets, that's where you input the sample data. And then once you do that, all of the computations down here will get done. I have part that's for a confidence interval, and then underneath part for a hypothesis test for all 5 of the different options down here. So just to run through this really quick, I guess I'll just do it with a single proportion since it's here. Let's say if the sample proportion is 98 out of 203, and then the confidence level, so 0.9, let's say we want a 90% confidence interval. Then if you go down here, you get the point estimate, kind of the intermediate steps like the standard error and the margin of error, those sorts of things. And then you get the 2 endpoints down here at the bottom. And then if you want to compute a test statistic and a p-value, you can do that as well. I guess I would need to specify a null value in here to get this to work. I guess let's say 0.5. We'll just keep the most generic thing we could use for a single proportion. And then if you go down here, here's the output down here for a hypothesis test where we have the standard error test statistic. And then there are 2 options for the p-value. One is if you have a 2-sided alternative. The other one, it says 1-sided alternative with a short tail. So that means that if you have a less than in the alternative hypothesis, it'll compute the probability in the left tail. And if you have a greater than in the alternative hypothesis, it'll compute the probability in the right tail. So if you want to use this thing, this spreadsheet, as just a way to check your answers, if there's anything that you're stuck on, that's what it's there for. That's why I made this thing. So certainly go ahead and do it. I mean, I think it would be bad to be reliant on this thing because it wouldn't show up on an exam, but if you want to use it to check your work, that's what it's for. Okay, other things that I wanted to mention. I'll make another set of practice problems. That's actually the thing that I'm going to do as soon as I get this video shifted into a different format and then posted. Although there are some things that are certainly going to work again if they work the first time. By which I mean, if you know how to set up hypotheses, that works the same way on the second exam as it did in the first, right? It works the same way in Chapter 6 as it does in Chapter 4. Or the way that you would make a conclusion about a hypothesis test. That works the same in Chapter 6 as it does in Chapter 4. Or the way that you interpret a confidence interval works the same in Chapter 6 as it does in Chapter 3. So a lot of that inference stuff, the overall concepts are basically the same, and it's just that the computation is different. The way that you would compute a confidence interval using the central limit theorem, it is different than the way you would do it with a bootstrap distribution, right? There's a lot more algebra, for one thing. So that's the part that changes, really. It's those mechanical parts. The regression stuff, that's new. There wasn't anything about that on the first test, and then that does show up on the second test. So that would be homework 10, homework 11, and then the last lab. That's new, for sure. So I'll go through and I'll piece together a set of practice problems for the second exam the same way that I did it for the first one. And sure, there are going to be things that overlap because, like I said, a lot of the inference stuff, the overall concepts of setting up the hypotheses or how you make a decision, a conclusion at the end. And I guess generally what the p-value is, like if you have a less than in the alternative hypothesis, the p-value is going to be a left tail. If you have a greater than, it's a right tail. If you have a not equal to, it's both. That all still works. So there are things where if it made sense a couple of weeks ago, it's still going to make sense now, and that's going to be applicable to the second test. But it wouldn't hurt to go over that stuff again, I suppose. And the regression stuff, that is new. And I'll put all that together probably by 9 tonight, hopefully. It's about 7:45 right now. I think 9 is realistic. The other thing is, if anybody wanted to come in and go over anything, since 3 or 4 people did for the first exam, I can certainly do that. The weekend might be tough. I'll be around, but I don't know if I'll be available at any specific given point. Like, I don't know about early Sunday afternoon might be hard, things like that. If you wanted to do it, you can always ask, because if I'm around, if I'm not off somewhere else, then I do live really close, so it might be plausible for me to come in. If you want to do that, we can certainly do it, or if you want to go over stuff on Monday, we can do that too. I do have beginning of spring semester meetings and things, but there aren't going to be very many. I basically have the same TAs that I had in the fall, and the TA primary instructors that I'm overseeing, it's almost the same group of people, and the only change really is somebody who did it last spring, where they've already done it before, and I already went through that stuff with them before in depth, so then I just kind of have to go through it briefly. And so yeah, I do have spring semester stuff to do at the beginning of the week, but what I would have to do for that, I don't think would really take that long, and I could easily work around it. So if you do want to go through anything in person leading up to the second exam, just email me, and I think we'll be able to do that.